I want you to imagine two vastly different scenarios for a second.
Okay, I'm listening.
So in the first one, you are entirely alone. You're like thousands of miles from the nearest coastline, somewhere in the really punishing, freezing stretches of the Southern Ocean.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the wind is just howling at hurricane speeds. The waves are, I don't know, 70 feet high and towering over you.
That sounds terrifying.
Right. And your survival depends entirely on your own physical, moment-to-moment mental endurance.
Yeah, that sounds like an absolute nightmare, honestly.
Exactly. Now, wipe that image completely. For the second scenario, I want you to imagine you are navigating the crowded, noisy, like super high-pressure hallways of a high school boarding house.
Okay, a bit of a pivot there.
Just a bit. The warning bell is ringing. You've got this massive history paper due in 20 minutes that you barely started. Your roommate is inexplicably furious with you over a borrowed charger.
Oh, I remember those days.
Right. The air smells like stale body spray and anxiety. And, you haven't been home to your own bed in 3 months.
Which also sounds like its own very specific kind of nightmare, to be fair.
It really does. Now, these feel worlds apart, right? Like, one is this extreme maritime survival documentary, and the other is just a standard Tuesday for a teenager.
Yeah, completely different stakes. Or so you'd think.
Exactly. But today, for this deep dive, we are looking at a stack of notes in this really fascinating document titled, What a Boarder Can Learn from Dame Ellen MacArthur.
Which is such a brilliant concept.
It is. And for those who might not know, Dame Ellen MacArthur is the legendary British sailor who became globally famous for her solo voyage around the world.
71 days, right?
Yes, 71 days. Entirely alone at sea, battling some of the absolute most unpredictable and terrifying conditions on Earth.
Just incredible.
So our mission today is to explore how her extreme survival journey actually provides like the perfect blueprint for students who are navigating the really long, challenging journey of boarding school life.
I love this framing.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I have to admit, when I first saw the premise of comparing a high-stakes, life-or-death oceanic adventure to the daily realities of cafeteria politics, homework, and, growing up away from home,
It seems like a stretch.
it seemed like a massive stretch.
Yeah.
But the more you look at the actual psychological mechanics of what it takes to survive both, the parallels are genuinely mind-blowing.
It really is a brilliant, if unconventional, framework. Because when we think about boarding school or really any intense educational environment, we often default to focusing purely on the academic side.
Right, the grades, the college prep.
Exactly. Or maybe just the purely social side. But the source material asks us to look at it as an endurance event.
An endurance event.
Yeah, it is a grueling, long-term personal journey where a young person is suddenly forced to manage their own independence. They have to take on entirely new responsibilities and deal with these profound, terrifying moments of uncertainty.
It really is remarkably similar to a sailor setting off into the dark, unknown ocean. So to really understand this boarding school voyage, we first have to, I think, completely redefine what achievement actually looks like.
We absolutely do.
We have to move away from this highly romanticized idea of crossing the finish line and look at the reality of the daily grind that actually gets you there.
Because MacArthur's journey was absolutely not defined by one single dramatic moment of triumph at the end.
Right, crossing the line is just the end result.
The triumph was just the lagging indicator. The journey itself was shaped by highly consistent, almost tedious routines.
Yeah, the boring stuff.
Exactly. It was sheer persistence across thousands and thousands of miles of empty water. She didn't survive by constantly thinking about the finish line on day 34.
Because that would just be overwhelming.
She survived by focusing on getting through the next hour, checking the rigging, making the freeze-dried food, managing the sail tension.
And mapping that to boarding life changes the whole paradigm.
It really does.
Because a student's success isn't just about walking across a stage at graduation or, acing their final exams.
No, not at all.
Endurance in this context means maintaining focus during those incredibly long, grueling academic terms. It means continuing to put in the effort, even when your motivation inevitably takes a complete nosedive.
Oh, like in the middle of February?
Yes. When the weather is terrible and the term just feels totally endless, I always think of it like building muscle.
How so?
Well, you don't get strong from one dramatic lift, right? It's the boring daily reps.
That's a great way to put it.
But wait, I have to ask, isn't it incredibly hard for a teenager to see the long-term miles?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we know the teenage brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, is still developing. They aren't wired for long-term horizons.
No, they really aren't.
So how are they supposed to channel a world-class sailor's endurance when they're just like stressing about surviving tomorrow's math test?
Well, what's fascinating here is that shifting the focus from the finish line to daily endurance is exactly what bypasses that limitation.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it actually protects students from burnout. Think about the biological mechanism of stress.
Okay.
When a teenager is entirely fixated on the outcome,
Like that final grade.
right, the final grade, getting into a specific university, winning some end-of-year award, when they fixate on that, they're essentially living in the future.
And they can't control the future.
Exactly. And because they can't control it, their brain perceives that uncertainty as a threat, which continually spikes their cortisol levels.
Oh, wow. So they're just constantly stressed.
Constantly. Every single minor setback, like a bad quiz or a missed assignment, feels catastrophic because it threatens the finish line.
That makes so much sense.
But if they are taught to view this as a long voyage, they begin to accept that progress is incredibly slow.
So by shrinking the horizon to just daily endurance, you actually lower the stakes of the immediate moment.
Exactly. You are moving from outcome-focused thinking to process-focused thinking.
That lowers the stress.
It does. Acknowledging that the effort is cumulative helps them build lasting emotional strength. They start to realize that a bad day or failed quiz is just a rough patch of water.
It's a squall.
It's a squall. It is not the ship sinking, and it's not the end of the journey.
Right.
Students who understand endurance in this way are far better prepared for sustained challenges because their energy isn't constantly being depleted by the cortisol spikes of an emotional roller coaster.
That makes total sense. You're pacing your biology, not just your study habits.
Precisely.
But endurance isn't just about physical or academic stamina, is it? It's deeply psychological.
Oh, very much so.
And that leads directly to what I thought was the most surprising parallel in the source material, which is the challenge of isolation.
It is a really powerful connection and arguably the hardest part of the journey.
Yeah.
Because sailing alone at sea requires an unbelievable amount of emotional balance. You are completely alone with your thoughts, your fears, and just the heavy weight of your own decisions.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Because paradoxically, a boarding house is the exact opposite of the open ocean in terms of population density.
Right, there are people everywhere.
Exactly. It is a highly social, constantly buzzing, claustrophobic environment. You literally cannot escape other people.
No, you can't.
Yet, the source points out that even in that crowded environment, students can experience profound loneliness and homesickness.
Which is so true.
It's like, think about how you feel when you go to a massive networking event where you don't know anyone.
Oh, I hate that feeling.
Right. You are in a packed room, but you feel totally isolated. While MacArthur's isolation was literal and physical, a boarder's isolation is emotional.
They are surrounded by peers, yet they are fundamentally separated from their primary support system.
Their family, the safety of their childhood home.
Exactly. And we shouldn't underestimate the psychological weight of that separation.
No, definitely not.
When MacArthur was in the Southern Ocean and something broke, say a sail tore or a line snapped, she had to fix it herself.
There was no rescue boat coming.
There was no rescue boat. And for a teenager in a dorm, when a complex social dispute erupts or they feel overwhelmed by a class, they suddenly realize their parents aren't there to step in and fix it.
That realization must be incredibly isolating.
It is. The source outlines how boarders have to develop profound self-awareness to cope with that specific type of emotional isolation.
What does that actually look like in practice, though? Like for a kid?
Well, it means learning how to actively downregulate their own nervous systems.
Okay, how do they do that?
They have to learn how to reflect on their feelings during the quiet moments, maybe during a free period, or putting on headphones and zoning out before bed.
Right.
It's not just thinking about their day, it's learning to identify their own emotional state. Like, am I actually angry right now, or am I just exhausted?
Oh, that's a huge distinction.
It's massive. They learn the importance of maintaining communication with supportive people outside the school walls, grounding themselves, while also finding comfort in the rhythm of familiar routines within the boarding house.
Now, this raises an important question, I think. How does a teenager actually find their center in such a chaotic environment?
It's tough.
Because learning to be comfortable with yourself when there is constant peer pressure, cafeteria social hierarchies, and just sheer noise around you.
It's a lot.
That sounds like a nearly impossible task for a 15-year-old.
It is a heavy lift, there's no denying that. But the self-awareness required to survive solo at sea is the exact same psychological muscle needed to navigate the social complexities of a dorm.
Really? The exact same?
Yes, because when you are comfortable with yourself, you build an internal locus of control.
Okay, an internal locus of control.
You become less reactive to the social drama around you because your sense of stability is internal, not external.
Ah, I see.
MacArthur couldn't control the ocean, right? She could only control her response to it.
That's a great point.
A student can't control the chaotic, sometimes cruel social dynamics of high school, but by developing that self-awareness, they can control how they move through it.
So they aren't just getting tossed around.
Exactly. They learn that they don't have to ride every single emotional wave that sweeps through the dorm.
I really like that distinction, internal versus external stability.
It's crucial.
But practically speaking, if a student is dealing with this emotional isolation and they are trying to build up this daily endurance we talked about, how do they keep from just drowning under the pressure of it all?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because the homework still has to get done. The college applications still loom. They need a map, and they need a way to keep from panicking when things go wrong.
Right.
And this is where the source dives into the mechanics of planning and emotional regulation.
Exactly, because long journeys demand careful, almost obsessive preparation.
You can't just wing it.
You absolutely cannot just wing a 71-day solo trip around the globe. MacArthur relied on incredibly structured plans to manage risk and to maintain her safety. She had protocols for absolutely everything.
Yeah, the source notes some crazy details about this, like she didn't just sleep when she was tired, she broke her sleep into 20-minute micronaps.
Yes, the micronaps. And the mechanism behind that is totally fascinating.
Why did she do that?
She took 20-minute micronaps so her brain never entered deep REM sleep.
Oh, wow.
Because if an alarm went off, because the wind shifted or a storm was approaching, she couldn't afford the grogginess of waking up from deep sleep.
She had to be ready to go immediately.
She had to be instantly alert. It was a biological hack integrated into a strict plan just to keep her alive.
Okay, so how does that translate to a boarding student? Because obviously, we don't want teenagers sleeping in 20-minute increments.
No, definitely not. We want them sleeping a lot more than that.
Right. But how does that level of planning map to their survival? I struggle with this because when I was that age, planning just meant writing down when a paper was due and a planner I would inevitably lose.
Oh, we all did that.
What?
But for a boarding student, translating that survival protocol means organizing study schedules far in advance to avoid the panic of cramming. It's about managing your time effectively between your academic requirements and your social commitments, which are both pulling at you constantly and draining your energy.
Sure.
But crucially, it's about breaking massive, overwhelming goals into smaller, achievable steps.
Okay, let me push back on that a bit. Is planning really just about time management? Because that sounds like standard school advice, not like survival tactics.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it goes much deeper than just time management.
How so?
Planning is fundamentally a psychological tool to reduce anxiety.
Okay, I'm tracking.
When a student is staring down a massive end-of-term project, their amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, can easily interpret that as an insurmountable threat.
And they freak out.
Right, but by breaking that massive goal down into small, daily, manageable steps, they are literally signaling to their brain that the threat is manageable.
Oh, that's really interesting.
They are turning a massive cloud of uncertainty into concrete action. That preparation reduces the baseline anxiety.
But the ocean is unpredictable. I mean, even with the best plan, storms hit.
They always do.
A teenager can plan their study schedule perfectly, and then suddenly their computer crashes, or they get dumped by their partner, or they bomb a test they studied hours for.
Yup, the unexpected squalls.
Extreme environments demand calm judgment when the plan falls apart. So if planning is the boat that keeps you afloat, is emotional regulation the steering wheel that keeps you from crashing?
Yes, because things always go wrong. That is the very nature of a long journey. MacArthur had to stay completely focused and emotionally regulated when gear failed or the weather turned violently against her.
Let's talk about that emotional regulation for a second.
Sure.
Because usually people use this cliche metaphor like the steering wheel thing I just used.
It's a bit tired.
Yeah, it doesn't really explain what's happening in the moment of crisis.
Yeah.
I actually prefer to think of emotional regulation more like a circuit breaker in a house.
Oh, a circuit breaker. I like that. Walk me through it.
So think about a dorm room. The social drama is peaking, there's a rumor spreading, you have a massive history paper due, and suddenly your roommate starts blasting music.
Total system overload.
Exactly. The system's getting overloaded. Without emotional regulation, the wiring catches fire. You scream at your roommate, you throw your laptop, you basically have a meltdown.
Right.
But emotional regulation is the circuit breaker that trips. It forces a temporary power down. You step out of the room, you take a breath, you reset the system before the whole house burns down.
That is a perfect analogy. Because that circuit breaker is vital, it explains the biology of decision-making under pressure.
Oh, how so?
Well, when that social or academic pressure hits, the stress response kicks in, and the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for logical thinking, starts to shut down.
So you literally can't think straight.
You cannot. You are operating purely on emotion and instinct. If you cannot regulate your emotions, if you cannot trip that circuit breaker and take a breath, you cannot bring the logical part of your brain back online. You end up reacting out of fear, panic, or anger rather than making calm, rational judgments.
Just like MacArthur fixing her boat.
Exactly. She had to regulate her terror so she could logically fix a broken mast. The student has to regulate their panic so they can logically navigate a failed exam or vicious rumor.
Right.
Developing confidence in their ability to trip that circuit breaker and reset is what allows students to survive those squalls without completely capsizing.
Which brings us to, I think, the most important part of this entire deep dive.
The destination.
The final phase of the journey.
Yeah.
Making landfall.
Yes.
Because all of this daily grinding, the late night study sessions, the emotional regulation, the circuit breaking, the homesickness, it eventually leads somewhere.
It has to.
We have to transition from the mechanics of the journey to the ultimate destination. Because all of this effort would be completely pointless if it didn't fundamentally change the person doing it. So what actually happens to a person after enduring this?
Well, completing a solo voyage around the world involves so much more than just physical survival.
It changes you.
It is a profound, irreversible personal transformation. You are biologically, psychologically, and emotionally not the same person stepping off that boat that you were when you stepped onto it.
That's incredibly powerful.
And the source makes it very clear that boarding life provides a remarkably similar crucible for personal growth over time.
So what does this all mean? It's the contrast between the nervous, sort of overwhelmed kid whose parents drop them off on day one and the young adult who packs up their room on the last day of senior year.
Exactly. Night and day.
And the source highlights that this growth isn't just academic. It includes developing this deeply ingrained sense of independence. It's strengthening that core resilience we've been talking about, so that when they hit a wall in college or in their career, their brain already knows, oh, I've survived this kind of stress before.
They have that baseline.
Right, and it's building deeply meaningful friendships that were literally forged in the fire of shared stressful experiences.
Right, because trauma bonding, or in this case, challenge bonding, creates incredibly strong social ties. You survived the storm together.
You really did. For you listening, think back to your own formative journeys.
Yeah, think about it.
Think about the times you were thrown into a totally new environment, a new city, a grueling new job, or your own school experience, and you just had to figure it out.
You had to adapt.
You had to learn how to regulate your own panic and build your own routines. This source is showing us that boarding school isn't just an educational track you get put on to learn calculus and literature. It is an identity-shaping crucible.
And I think that is the most vital, resonant takeaway from the text.
Absolutely.
This entire framework is about validating the massive, unseen weight of the experience of the boarding student.
It's acknowledging how hard it is.
Yes, it is validating that boarding life is one of the most formative, long-term experiences a young person can undergo. It permanently shapes who they become.
It really does.
By surviving the daily grind, the emotional isolation, and the unpredictable storms, they learn to maintain motivation across demanding periods. They learn to adapt to rapid, terrifying changes.
Which is such a vital life skill.
It is the ultimate life skill, and most importantly, they build absolute, unshakable confidence in their ability to cope with whatever life throws at them next.
Been through it.
Exactly. It builds the maturity and responsibility that completely prepares them for those massive future transitions, like going off to university or starting a demanding career.
Yeah.
They are learning how to be the captain of their own ship, navigating complex emotional and academic waters long before they actually reach the open ocean of adulthood.
It's just an incredibly empathetic way to frame those years. A boarder may not literally sail across freezing oceans, but they are navigating their own epic, high-stakes, long-term journey.
They truly are.
There are going to be perfectly calm, beautiful days where everything clicks, and there are going to be terrifying, difficult storms where everything seems to go wrong at once.
Without a doubt.
There will be moments of massive excitement and profound, quiet moments of doubt, where they look around their dorm room and wonder what they are even doing out there.
It's a roller coaster.
But the story of Dame Ellen MacArthur proves that steady perseverance, careful psychological preparation, and deep self-belief can carry us through the absolute worst conditions.
And the source notes a very specific, quiet truth, which is that progress takes time. And mistakes along the way should never lead to permanent discouragement.
Right.
And I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. If boarding school is truly a voyage comparable to a solo circumnavigation of the globe, how might that change the way we judge the everyday mistakes or storms a student goes through?
Oh, that's a great question.
If we started treating a teenager's daily academic struggles, their messy social conflicts, and their emotional burnout with the exact same awe, respect, and patience we give an explorer navigating the brutal open ocean, how would our expectations of their journey fundamentally shift?
Wow, that completely changes the picture. Suddenly, a messy dorm room or a bombed math test isn't a character failure. It's just a broken compass that needs fixing while the waves are crashing over the deck.
Exactly.
Next time you see a teenager navigating those muddy, complicated waters, remember, they aren't just going to school. They are out there in the deep ocean learning how to sail.